welcome to the lecture 22 in this course on noise control in mechanical systems. So, here we will start the last series of lectures in the module on human response to noise. So, here we have noise regulations and guidelines part 1. So, to summarize, we have been discussing about the human response to noise, which is hearing, then what is the impact that the noise has on human health, and then how to evaluate the noise induced hearing loss, and the standard process of audiometry has been used to evaluate it. In this particular lecture, we will get an overview of the noise pollution worldwide and what are the effects, and after this quick overview, we will see the need for noise regulations, and then what are the noise regulations worldwide and in India, and some guidelines and recommendations for the same. So, to sum up, noise pollution is a health hazard. It is there everywhere, be it in the industry. We have the industrial noise pollution, various sources such as machinery, construction equipment, assembly line, and a lot of other things. And the impact it has on the workers is that it leads to the hearing loss, the stress, and even to the people living close by, there is a disturbance to these people. In the same way, we have transport noise pollution. Again, various sources are there. You have the road traffic, railways, air traffic, then the marine transportation system, and they are also impacting the sleep disturbance. So, even if you are resident near these highways, for example, very busy roads, etc., then sleep disturbance is caused, stress can be there. And when these transportation systems are being made, then they are usually made by deforestation and cutting of the places, and to the wildlife that is living nearby. Sometimes the transportation, these routes could be through the jungles and the wildlife, they are also disrupting the wildlife and also disturbance to the nearby people. You also have residential noise pollution due to loud television, household appliances, the pets, and various other outdoor activities. You can have certain noisy neighbors who do not have the civil, they lack the civic sense, and they play the loud television, music, and use various kind of noisy appliances and equipments and make lot of noise in general, and it can lead to neighbor disputes, disturbance in the sleep. If suppose some neighbor has a habit of playing loud music or television or shouting at the night, sleep disturbance can be caused. Overall, it can reduce the quality of life because you are living with that person forever. Then commercial noise pollution also takes place, where you have noise pollution due to various such commercial areas like restaurants, bars, clubs, then various kind of retail stores, shopping malls. They themselves have got these elevators, announcements, HVAC systems, and the hustle and bustle of the people in general. They can also lead to stress and disrupt the residents. Noise pollution can also manifest as environmental noise pollution, which is caused by the natural sources, thunderstorm, wind, ocean waves, the wildlife, and also the human induced activities like the deforestation, agricultural activities. Again, they might not be as they might not be as profound as the previous one, but once in high intensity, they can also lead to sleep disturbance and reduce your quality of life. The occupational noise pollution, again in the occupational noise you have this manufacturing plant, power tool machineries, and various other things that might be used, and all of that leads to hearing loss. We already discussed in depth about occupational noise exposure and the NIOSH guidelines for the occupational noise exposure and the noise induced hearing loss. So, this noise induced hearing loss can happen, tinnitus can happen, stress, and the decrease in the productivity of the worker because they need quiet environments to work properly, do the cognitive tasks as well. Then social noise pollution is yet another form of noise pollution, where especially in a country like India, which is a country of celebrations, we have lot of festivals, parades, political rallies, sports event and concerts, and just playing of the loudspeakers in the public spaces, in the social gatherings, and they can impact the sleep, they can cause annoyance and headache, and they can disturb in the cognitive task. I remember that when I used to study, and whenever there would be some kind of festival or some kind of marriage function that whole night and day is ruined, you cannot study, you cannot do any mental task that day. Then you have the impulse noise pollution due to these impulsive sources. Though the frequency of occurrence of the impulse noise is not that much, you do not have explosions or gunshots or fireworks every day. They are very occasional, but occasionally these things can also lead to hearing loss and ear pain. So, noise pollution is there everywhere. It manifests in these various forms that we saw, and according to the ISE Acoustics of Australia, the world's noisiest cities are Dhaka, Moradabad, Islamabad, Rajshahi and Ho Chi Minh City. Some of these highest cities, and the maximum noise levels recorded in these cities, as you can see, is above 100 dB. It is a extremely dangerous and loud noise. So, in general, what we can say that with increasing urbanization, increasing modernization, we are getting a lot of benefits, but it is also leading to the world becoming an overall noisy place. So, we definitely need some regulations or policy making to keep this thing in check. Okay? Why? Because obviously it is a health emergency. WHO has classified this as a health emergency. 1.1 billion young people have been found to be at risk of irreversible hearing loss due to this noise exposure. It also comes as a cultural crisis, noise being a growing problem with disturbing acceptance of loud and disrupting behavior. As I said in the previous lecture, shouting, being noisy, yelling and screaming is being normalized. It is not normal, it is a noisy behavior, it is not normal, and it is leading to a cultural crisis that we are facing in the modern society. Then unbearable road noise, definitely excessive honking is happening in the roads, and these unbearable noisy environments, they are causing stress and discomfort, especially if you see a busy road or a street and you have the jams and people, and there's just noise of a lot of vehicles surrounding you, and on top of that you have these excessive honkings. It just leads to the stress of the driver, and how does the driver respond to these stresses? They just shout and they increase the noise levels even further in response to already excessive noise. Then there can be noise in the domestic noise, constant noise from the televisions, other household sources. They are disturbing the peace even at home. So, there is no relief even at home, and in various households. We are facing, because of this increasing noisy environment, we have the spiritual erosion, because spirituality needs peaceful silence. Okay, it is very essential to spirituality. However, that is difficult to achieve when people are being overwhelmed by the loud religious practices, which are very noisy and essentially are not spiritual in nature. The protection of public health is definitely becoming a necessity. Public health and noise being an essential part to human health. You have to prevent the hearing loss. You have to reduce the cardiovascular risk that it sort of induces on the people. The various mental health and well-being has to be protected, and hence noise needs to be regulated. Similarly, improving the quality of life is very essential in a modern world and the modern society, and this also necessitates the need for noise pollution. So, we need to reduce the annoyance and the stress, enhance our sleep quality, very much essential to improve our quality of life, all necessitating the need for noise regulation. In the same way, environmental protection is also very important, protection of the wildlife who might be suffering from the noisy environment, preserving of the natural habitat. Noise also has got, if you reduce the noise or regulate the noise, it also has economic benefits, because suppose in any occupational environment, especially a factory floor, industrial setup, an office room cubicle, in all of this, noise can actually disturb the people from their task that they are doing. Okay, so if you have, suppose you are in an office cubicle and you have a noisy neighbor or some kind of drilling going on or some construction happening in the next door building, then you will not be able to perform. Okay, the task that you could do in 2 hours, now because of that excessive noise nearby, you are able to do it in 6 hours or 7 hours. Okay, it is taking you time to concentrate and focus and finish your work, and hence it is decreasing the productivity of the workers and the employees. So, there is a loss in economy as well. So, legal and above all, we have a legal and social responsibility, and we should ensure that guidelines are there where we can comply with some acceptable noise levels, so that we stop causing discomfort to ourselves and to the next nearby human beings. So, that is why you need to regulate the noise. And if you just have a quick global perspective of this noise regulation, you can see that steps and measures have been taken since long time in the various forms. For example, WHO from time to time issues the guidelines, and with the as the years pass by, the various guidelines are also amended to suit the modern needs. So, guidelines and the amendments are in place in WHO. Then again, International Organization for Standardization, or the ISO, it is issuing various guidelines or standards on how to monitor the noise, what are the metrics that can be used, how you should measure the noise of a machinery and evaluate the environmental noise. In the lines with the WHO guidelines, the European Union also gives its environmental noise directives, which people ought to follow. United States, we have the Noise Control Act of 1972, which was a pioneer act in this field. Then you have a special agency called as the Environmental Protection Agency, and noise pollution also comes as one of the special areas within this Environmental Protection Agency. In Japan, you have Noise Regulation Law of 1968, another pioneer law in noise regulation. In Australia, you have the Environmental Protection Act 1994, where within this you have various recommendations and guidelines for the noise levels. In Germany, you have the Federal Emission Control Act by BIMSHG, and that also specifies noise as one of its special area and how it should be regulated. So, here I would like to take a step back and tell you that various directives and guidelines are in place, but these are just guidelines, they are not law per se. So, based on that, people can file complaints, they can put a case to stop the noise, but again it is not a hard and fast law. These are guidelines or directives given to people in general. It ultimately boils down to the people how much they follow it. Okay, so if you think about it, the ISO has given up their various standards, and guidelines on how to measure and assess the noise. Okay, the ISO 1996-1, ISO 96132 and so on. So, this standard, it is a guideline for measuring and assessing the environmental noise, including the noise descriptors and procedures to be followed. This particular standard by ISO is used to calculate the sound attenuation outdoors, and which is a very crucial part for assessing the impact of noise in the outdoor areas. Some other standards by ISO are ISO 226-2003. It specifies the equal loudness contours, and essentially from this standard we are able to incorporate the human ear perception and use it for evaluating the or monitoring of the noise. Then the ISO 7171, this particular standard, which is the latest standard out of the discussed. This is the guidelines for rating the sound insulation in the buildings. Again, this is very key in order to evaluate the noise control in residential and the commercial places. How to give the ratings to the various sound insulation that is installed in the buildings, these guidelines are available there. Then if you look at the efforts done by WHO, so they have issued various guidelines for health and environment. In this, as part of this, what they have done is that they have recommended noise exposure level for global audience. They have also recommended and given that the following noise indicators should be used while evaluating the noise exposure. So, the key indicators that WHO recommends are these. You can use an indicator called as L10. So, L obviously throughout this course, when I refer to L, it means that it is the SPL or the sound pressure level. So, when it is the sound pressure level DEN, which means D for day, E for evening and N for night. So, this is the level day, evening, night, which means the average sound pressure level over all days, evenings and nights. So, a 24-hour average you can say for a year. So, This is usually used for environmental noise monitoring. You have a particular environmental area, be it a traffic, a transportation area, a commercial area, an industrial area or a residential area. You can use this measure. Over a year you monitor the noise levels at different parts of the day, evenings and the nights, and you prepare a yearly average which is L10. Then you have just an average for the night time, and L night has to be lower than L10 because people are sleeping at night. We need lower levels at night. So, this is the equivalent continuous sound pressure level when the reference time interval is at night. So, nighttime recordings are done and the average is taken over a period of time. LA equivalent is again you calculate the continuous sound pressure levels. In the previous lectures we have seen how to calculate an L equivalent, which is the continuous sound pressure levels over a long period of time, and when you apply the A weighting filter to it to convert it into the A levels, then that same thing becomes LA equivalent. So, here the first two indicators are particularly used for noise monitoring and exposure assessment, and the third one is usually used for the leisure noise exposure. So, as per the WHO guidelines, the noise sources, they are recommended to never exceed. So, they should not exceed the following sound pressure levels, so that they are helpful for the people residing nearby. So, the road traffic noise, the L10 should be lesser than 53 dB and the night noise exposure should be less than 45 for the comfort of the people living nearby. Similarly, railway noise, these are the levels. Aircraft noise, again this is the level, and the wind turbine noise we have less than 45 dB, which is an overall yearly average for the noise levels at these areas taken at different parts of the day, evening and night. Okay, for the leisure sources also some SPLs have been recommended. So, by recommended you mean that this is the upper limit. Okay, that does not mean that they have to have this level, it means that it should not exceed that level. So, for the leisure sources yearly average should always be within 70 dB for an LA equivalent measured over a 24 hours time, weekly average up to less than equal to 80 dB, such as through the your personal music system, your loudspeakers, your outdoor gaming activities. Then short term average from the occasional source can still be not beyond 100 if it is an occasional source, like for example once or twice in a year you are having some kind of party or some kind of orchestra or something, then you can go up to 100 dB. So, these are the recommendations done by the WHO. Now, let us see what is this is just a quick global perspective. Let us see specifically in the context of India what is the legal framework we have with respect to regulating the noise. So, in the Indian Constitution, in the Article 21, it gives that the people have the right to life and personal liberty to all the people within India and the right to peaceful environment. So, on the basis of Article 21, a person can claim the right for a peaceful environment, and if you think that there is some kind of event or some kind of source that is continuously disturbing your peaceful environment, then you have the right to demand for regulating that particular noisy source. In the same way you have this Article 48A. Here the state is required to protect and improve the environment, and this also includes within the protection of the environment, just like we have the air pollution, land pollution, even the noise pollution is included within this protection. The other legal framework is the Environment Protection Act of 1986, and within this act, in the central legislation, it empowers the central government to be able to enforce environmental protection, and within that it also includes noise, because protection of environment includes all forms of pollution, be it land, air or noise. Okay, and within the same act also we have the noise pollution regulation and control rules that were added in the year 2000 because of the growing noise concerns, and these rules set the standards for noise levels in industrial, commercial, residential and the silent zone areas. Then the third kind of framework is the Air Act, which is also called as the Air Prevention and Control of Pollution Act 1981. Here within this act, noise is also defined as an air pollutant. Just like you assess the air quality and you see that what kind of particulates are there, smoke or dust particles. In the same way, even the noise which is present in the air has been included as one form of air pollutant. So, once noise is defined as an air pollutant, then the Air Act will be responsible and can be used for controlling and regulating this noise. So, in the 1987 amendment, the Act added noise to the list of the harmful substances in air, and the Act allows for the regulation of noise emissions from the industrial plants and various other sources in order to monitor and control the air quality. We also have a criminal procedure code section 133, and here this section 133 is about public nuisance and what can be termed as a public nuisance, and action can be taken against that public nuisance. So, here noise pollution is one such public nuisance which has been added as one of the public nuisance under this section, and this allows the magistrates at the district level to issue the orders for removal of such nuisance. So, if you think if you are a citizen and you think that there is some noisy source or something which is creating a lot of noise and disturbing your peace, you can first request the owner of this noise source to keep it down, and if they do not abide by it because of your after even your repetitive requests and pleas, you can actually approach the district magistrate, and within this section you can actually book for controlling and regulating the noise and removing that noise source. We have the very famous Motor Vehicles Act of 1988, which laid down the various standards for vehicle, and amongst the various standards that the vehicles need to comply, there was also some noise standards that the vehicles need to comply. So, this act empowers the authorities to regulate what should be the noise emissions from the vehicles and set up the limits on the horn usage and the exhaust noise. So, just like the vehicles now are coming with some kind of some limits are set to the amount of emissions that they need to make. In the same way, the limits have also been set on the amount of noise emissions that the vehicles need to make. Okay, so since we studied a lot about occupational noise exposure and how workplace noise can be very dangerous, decrease the productivity and lead to noise induced hearing loss. So, there are special laws to regulate the workplace noise. So, let us first see what is in place in India. So, it becomes very important for workers' health and safety, and also it could help if you can regulate the noise, the workers will be more focused, there will be less disturbance, and this would minimize their errors, cause less accidents, improve the efficiency and the productivity of the workers. So, you have multifold benefits. It is better for the workers' health and also better for the productivity. So, the very famous the Factories Act 1948 was implemented and was charted out in India. According to this act, that the employers must ensure a safe working environment, and in the safe working environment, it is not just the exposure to hazardous chemicals or dangerous fumes, but also it includes the exposure to dangerous noise levels. So, all of this needs to be managed, even the noise levels, so that the workers' health can be protected. And not just that, the employers, they must ensure that they provide hearing protection to their workers who are being exposed to these hazardous noise levels, and they ensure that regular hearing test is being done to monitor whether their workers are suffering from any hearing loss. Okay. Then we have the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code of 2020. It incorporates the management of noise exposure in the various industries, and again the employers, they are required to evaluate the noise levels in their factories and various industrial areas and adopt whatever measures they can do in their capacity to reduce the excessive noise exposure and prevent any long-term health consequence. A very famous article was published by the Gazette of India in the part 2 section 1. This is produced and published by the Ministry of Law and Justice or the Legislative Department of India. In this article here in September 2020, they have specially directed that the precautions need to be taken to protect the dock workers against the various harmful effects of excessive noise, vibrations and other air pollutions at the workplace. And here noise induced hearing loss has been indicated and quantified as a notifiable disease among these workers. Okay, so this is the workplace noise regulation in India. So what is happening worldwide? Let us see some of the international standards with respect to workplace noise regulation. So the first standard body is the OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Now every country has got its own standard body, but we will just see a couple of them in this particular course. One is OSHA, which is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration standards. These are being set by the USA. So they have set that what should be the maximum sound exposure level and the maximum duration over which it can be exposed to. So which means that if this is the noise level, then the exposure time within an occupational setting should never exceed a particular time, and vice versa. If this is the exposure time, then the noise level should not exceed beyond this. So if a worker is working 8 hours a day, the noise levels are set to 90 dB average, which means that they should not be exposed beyond 90 dB in an 8 hours day. If it is 6 hours, then they can be exposed to a maximum of 92 dB and vice versa, and so on. So as you are increasing the noise exposure level, the duration, the maximum duration to which the worker can be exposed per day is going down, and so on. And you see that the exposure should to continuous steady state noise should be limited to a maximum of 115 dBA. It should not exceed 115 dBA. And any exposure to impulsive or impact noise should not exceed 140 dB peak noise level. So for continuous exposure, 115 dBA is the limit. For just transient, impulsive or one time exposure, 140 dB is the limit. And whenever the noise levels are above this 85 dBA average over 88 working hours in a week, then the employers have to implement a hearing conservation program. So with this, I would like to end this lecture. Thank you for listening.